My name is Gerald Whitfield. I'm 71 years old and I was polishing my shoes when my whole life cracked open. It was a Tuesday. I had the brown leather Oxfords out on the kitchen table, the good ones I only bring out for family dinners. I was standing in the kitchen in my undershirt, holding a tin of polish, trying to decide between the Cabernet and the Merlot. Leonard likes something with weight to it. I was reaching for the Cabernet when my phone buzzed on the counter. It was a text from Philip Stanton. My lawyer of 28 years, the man still writes letters by hand when he thinks something matters. He has sent me exactly 3 texts in 28 years, and each one was a death in the family. So when 4 words lit up my screen, something cold moved through my chest before I even finished reading them. Call me immediately. I put the wine bottle down. I noticed my hand was steady, which surprised me. I dialed. Philip did not say hello. He said, "Gerald, where are you? Are you alone?" I told him I was in my kitchen getting ready for dinner. "I just received an emergency legal filing," he said. His voice had that flat quality it gets when he is controlling something. "An attorney representing Leonard has petitioned the court for a full conservatorship over your personal finances and medical decisions. Gerald, your son is trying to have you declared legally incompetent." I stood there in my socks on the kitchen tile. The shoe I'd been polishing was still in my left hand. I looked at the wine bottle on the counter. I looked at the Oxfords on the table. I had been standing in this kitchen getting ready to drive to my son's house for dinner, and my son had been in a courthouse filing papers to take my life away from me. My name is Gerald Whitfield. I spent 35 years as a mechanical engineer designing operating systems for steel processing plants across Ohio. I built systems that ran 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, handling thousands of tons of pressure and heat, and not one of them failed on my watch. I still manage my own investment portfolio, $322 million, up 8% last year, which is 3 points above the index. My doctor told me last month I have the cardiovascular profile of a man in his mid-50s. I read the Wall Street Journal every morning. I'm currently restoring a 1967 Ford Mustang in my garage, and I can tell you the torque spec on every bolt in that engine bay from memory. And my son just told a judge I could not take care of myself. Philip read me the filing. Significant cognitive decline. Erratic financial decisions, susceptible to undue influence, potentially a danger to himself and his own estate. I listened to every word. The anger came, but it came in cold, not hot. Like switching from a furnace to a refrigerator, everything got very clear and very quiet inside my head. "Philip," I said when he finished, "I have dinner at Leonard's house tonight, Tuesday family dinner. Cancel it. Do not go there, Gerald. You cannot walk in there knowing what you know and expect to keep your composure." "I'm going," I said. "That is a mistake. I need to look at him," I said. "I need to sit across the table from my son and watch him smile at me while he knows what he filed this afternoon. I need to see what that looks like." Philip was quiet for a moment. He has known me since Margaret was alive. He has seen me make decisions other people thought were wrong and watched me turn out to be right. He knew I was not going to run from this. "All right," he said finally, "but you listen to me. You do not drink anything they hand you. You do not sign anything, not a birthday card, not a dinner napkin, nothing. You do not argue with him. You do not let on that you know. You sit there, you observe, and the moment dinner is over, you drive directly to my office. I will be waiting regardless of the hour." I put the good Oxfords back in the closet. I was not going to waste them on a performance. I found a cheap bottle of Merlot in the back of the pantry, something I'd been given at a neighbor's cookout and never opened, and I drove to Dublin. Leonard's house is in one of those neighborhoods where the driveways are longer than some people's yards, $2.8 million, and I helped with the down payment, $18,000, which I told Margaret was a loan. We both knew it wasn't. When I told her, she went quiet in a way I recognized. Margaret went quiet when she was doing arithmetic. I did not ask her what she was calculating that day. I should have. His wife Judith opened the door before I could ring the bell. Judith is a handsome woman who smiles with her whole face and calculates with her eyes at the same time. She looked at the wine label for half a second, then looked back at me with the smile fully restored. "Gerald," we were starting to worry. "Come in, it's cold." The house was lit up like a hotel lobby, Italian marble in the foyer, a chandelier that cost more than my first car. The smell of roasted garlic coming from the kitchen. I had paid for the front door and I felt like a guest standing inside it. Leonard came out from the living room with his hand extended. He is 44 years old and has the handshake of a man who has been told his whole life that a firm handshake matters. "Dad, glad you made it. We were worried about the drive in this weather," he smiled. It was a complete smile, a total performance, and something about seeing it after what I had just heard made the refrigerator inside me go down another 10 degrees. We sat down to dinner. Leonard talked about a new consulting opportunity that was going to be different from the previous ones. I have heard some version of this sentence 4 times in 8 years. I nodded and ate. Judith kept the conversation moving the way a traffic cop keeps cars moving, smooth and efficient, never letting anything stop long enough to become awkward. My grandson Otto sat at the far end of the table with his phone in his lap, looking up occasionally when someone said his name. He is 16 and he has the glazed expression of a boy who has spent his whole life watching his parents perform for company. I felt sorry for him. He did not know what his parents were. Neither had I until 4 hours ago. Judith waited until dessert was on the table. She set down her fork, turned toward me and put her hand over mine. Her nails were perfect. Her expression was perfect. Gerald, we have been talking a lot lately, Leonard and I. We worry about you, all alone in that house, managing everything yourself. She paused. You have worked your entire life. You have done so much for this family. You deserve to rest. Leonard looked up from his plate. We just think it might be time to let us take some of the burden. The accounts, the property taxes, the investments, we can handle all of that. You would not have to think about any of it. I looked at my son. I looked at Judith. I looked at the hand she had placed over mine with its perfect nails and its perfect warmth, the velvet glove, the friendly-sounding cage door. That is very thoughtful, I said. Let me think about it. The relief that moved across Judith's face was so fast and so genuine that she could not hide it. For just a fraction of a second, before she replaced it with the warm smile, I saw what she actually felt, and it was not love for an aging father-in-law. It was the relief of a person who has been waiting a very long time and finally thinks the waiting is almost over. I drove to Philip's office. It was 9:15 at night. The light on the 10th floor was on. He was waiting with cold coffee and a stack of documents on his mahogany desk. Philip did not bother with pleasantries. He turned his monitor toward me before I had even taken off my coat. I pulled their financials this afternoon the moment I got the petition. I want you to see what you're actually dealing with. The screen was a wall of red numbers. Leonard and Judith owed $180,000 across 6 credit cards, most of it from the past 2 years. They had taken out a $420,000 second mortgage on the Dublin house 8 months ago. That money was gone. Every dollar of it had gone into a logistics technology startup that Leonard had described to me once as a sure thing. The company declared bankruptcy in March. $350,000 dissolved, like it had never existed. And then Philip clicked to the next page and I saw the thing that explained the emergency petition, the rush, the desperate and clumsy timing of all of it. 3 weeks ago, Leonard had signed a purchase agreement on a vacation property on Lake Erie, a lakefront house, the kind with a dock and a boathouse. He had put down a $150,000 non-refundable deposit. The remaining balance was $1.1 million. That payment was due in 12 days. I sat back in the chair. The numbers arranged themselves in my head, the way engineering numbers always do, clean and without mercy. The deposit money was almost certainly the last of what he had pulled from the second mortgage. He had signed that contract 3 weeks ago, which meant he had been planning this conservatorship petition for at least that long, probably longer. He had signed a contract to buy a house he could not afford using money he had borrowed against a house he was already losing, and the only way to cover the final payment was to liquidate my estate. He told his broker he was coming into a large inheritance, Philip said. My investigator heard that from 2 separate sources at the marina. I looked at the screen for a long time. So this is not about protecting me, I said. It was never about protecting you. They need the whole thing, not a loan, not a gift, the whole estate. Yes, Philip said, and the only legal mechanism that allows them to access and liquidate your assets without your cooperation is a court-ordered conservatorship, which requires them to convince a judge you are not competent to manage your own affairs. I thought about Judith's hand over mine at the dinner table. I thought about Leonard's smile at the front door. I thought about the way Judith had looked at the cheap wine label and recovered in under a second. These were not impulsive people. They were desperate people who had been planning carefully. Then Philip told me about Dr. Neil Ashford. Ashford was listed in the petition as a supporting expert. His title was Senior Wellness Consultant, which is not a board-certified psychiatric designation. It is the kind of title a man invents for himself when he wants to sound medical without being held to medical standards. Ashford made house calls to elderly patients and produced written assessments for whoever engaged his services. He had submitted evaluations in 4 other conservatorship cases in the past 3 years. The petitioner had prevailed in all 4. He has not met me yet, I said. No, based on the filing, my expectation is that Judith will arrange for him to come to your house. She will present it as a casual visit, a wellness check, a friend of the family. I stood up and walked to the window. 10 floors down, Columbus was wet and quiet, the street lights smearing yellow across the pavement. I thought about the steel plants I had designed systems for, When a system is failing, you do not stand in front of it and demand that it stop. You understand its load points, you find where it is already weak, and then you give it exactly the pressure it cannot handle. Philip, I said, I want Ashford to come to the house. Gerald, I'm going to give them what they are looking for. Every confused phone call, every forgotten appointment, every sign that I am exactly the man they are telling the judge I am. I turned away from the window, and I'm going to record all of it. Philip looked at me for a long moment. He has a face that does not move much when he is thinking. Washington requires two-party consent for recordings, he said carefully. We are in Ohio. Ohio is a one-party state. You can record any conversation you are a participant in without the other party's knowledge or consent. He picked up his pen that covers phone calls. For in-person recordings in your home, you're on solid legal ground as well. There is no reasonable expectation of privacy when you're in another person's residence, particularly when that person has posted notice of a security system. I have an alarm system. Signs on the front lawn and the windows. Then we are covered. He made a note. What do you need? Nothing from a store. I'm going to source the components myself. The next morning I drove to an industrial electronics supplier on the east side of Columbus, the kind of place that sells to engineers and contractors, not consumers. I did not buy a packaged kit. I bought 3 wide-angle high-definition camera lenses no larger than a coat button, 3 high-sensitivity directional audio units, and a 1 terabyte secure server that would upload continuously to an encrypted cloud account that only Philip and I could access. I installed everything myself. It took 4 hours. I put the first lens in the bookshelf in my study, nestled between my old operating systems manual and a copy of a hydraulics textbook I have owned since 1978. The second went into the fireplace mantel in the living room, seated in a gap in the decorative woodwork, aimed directly at the armchair Judith always chooses when she visits. The third went high in the entry hall, in a shadow near the ceiling, covering the front door and the path to the living room. I sat down at my desk and opened the monitoring software. I could see my empty living room. I could see my empty study. I could hear the grandfather clock in the hallway. The audio was sensitive enough to pick up a car passing outside on the street. Then I picked up my phone and called Leonard. I put a slight hesitation in my voice, the kind that comes when a man is not quite sure of something. Son, I'm sorry to bother you. I'm looking for the number for the landscaper, the fellow who did the fence last fall. I thought I had it written down somewhere. Do you happen to have it? Leonard sighed. It was a small sigh, controlled, but I heard it. Dad, I gave you that number 2 weeks ago. Remember? I wrote it on the notepad by the refrigerator, the important numbers list we set up. Oh, right, of course I must have walked right past it. Sorry to bother you. It's fine, Dad. Are you feeling okay? Just a little tired. Thanks, son. I hung up. I set a timer on my watch for exactly 60 minutes. At the 1 hour mark, I called again. Leonard, I hate to keep bothering you. I still cannot find that landscaper's number anywhere. I've looked all over the kitchen. There was a silence on the line. It lasted 5 full seconds. I could hear him processing it, filing it, storing it. When he spoke again, the sigh was gone and something else had replaced it. His voice went soft and slow, the way people talk to someone they have already decided cannot keep up. Dad, we just talked about this an hour ago. I told you it was on the notepad by the refrigerator. You did. I let a note of genuine alarm come into my voice. I don't remember that at all. Leonard, I don't remember calling you. It's okay, Dad. He said it, the way you say it when it is not okay. It's okay. Why don't I come by later this week and we can get things organized a little better? Would you? That would be wonderful. I hung up. The trap was baited. Now I just had to be patient enough to let them walk into it. For 7 days I played the role. I called Leonard on day 2 to ask what day of the week it was. He told me it was Wednesday with the careful patience of a man who has been waiting for exactly this. On day 3, I left a message saying I had missed our lunch appointment and was so sorry. Could we reschedule? We had no lunch appointment. Leonard called Philip's office the next morning. Philip told me later that Leonard had been very concerned, very loving, very thorough in his description of the incident. On day 5, I asked Leonard to come over and help me log into my bank account online. I told him I had forgotten the password again. He sat at my desk and typed in my credentials, and I watched his hands. He did not ask me which account I wanted to access. He went straight to the main checking account. Then, without pausing, navigated directly to the investment portfolio summary. He knew exactly where it was. He had been in that account before without my permission, and he had not thought to hide the fact that he knew the navigation by memory. I let him show me the balances. I thanked him. After he left, I called Philip and described what I had seen. Philip said that was a separate legal matter and that we would add it to the file. Then came Judith with the papers. She called first to say she would be in the neighborhood and wanted to drop off some documents that would help simplify things. She arrived at 2 in the afternoon carrying a designer bag and a leather folio, and she sat in the living room armchair, right in the frame of the fireplace camera. She crossed her legs and unzipped the folio and set a stack of papers on the coffee table in front of me. "Gerald, this is absolutely nothing to worry about," she said. Her voice was warm and unhurried. "These are just some estate organization documents, standard stuff that a lot of people our age set up to reduce the paperwork burden. It just lets Leonard and me coordinate with your accountant, so you're not having to deal with all of that yourself." She fanned the stack slightly and pointed to the last page, where a yellow "Sign Here" sticker waited. Her left thumb came down flat and firm on the top of the first page, pressing across the title of the document. It was not a casual movement, it was practiced. "What does it say up there?" I asked, squinting toward the top of the stack. There are so many words. "My reading glasses are in the other room. It is just legal language," she said, and her thumb did not move. "Authorization for estate coordination. Completely standard wording. Nothing in here changes anything about your day-to-day life." I reached slowly for the pen she had placed on the table. My hand shook slightly, which was not difficult to produce after a week of playing this character. I fumbled for the pen, and when I picked it up, I knocked the edge of the stack with my wrist. The papers shifted maybe 2 inches to the left. Judith's thumb lost its position for 1 second, maybe less, as she reached to steady the stack. The camera on the fireplace mantel had a clear and unobstructed view. The title of the document was visible in plain bold print for that 1 second, and it read, "General Durable Power of Attorney." Judith's jaw tightened by a fraction. She repositioned the stack and pressed her thumb back down. "Just right here, Gerald. Take your time." I signed with a shaky and wandering hand that was nothing close to my actual signature, the one I have used on legal documents for 40 years. Judith took the papers back before the ink was fully dry. The relief on her face was immediate and unguarded. She had the document. She thought she had won. I named that file Exhibit A 4 days after Judith's visit. She called to say that her friend Dr. Neil Ashford happened to be coming through Columbus and would love to stop by, not a formal appointment. Just a friendly conversation, a wellness check, she called it. She said he was wonderful with people my age and that it would make her feel so much better just knowing I had spoken with him. I told her that sounded very nice and asked what time. That same evening I called Philip. He had already anticipated the move. "I have someone coming to your house tomorrow morning," he said, "before Ashford gets anywhere near you." Dr. Lorraine Dupont arrived at 9 o'clock on Wednesday. She is the head of geriatric psychiatry at Ohio State University Medical Center, and she has been in clinical practice for 22 years. Philip told me she does not testify as a paid expert witness. She testifies when she believes a fraud is being committed, and she wants it stopped. She came to my front door carrying a binder and a briefcase, and she shook my hand with the grip of someone who has no time for small talk. "Mr. Whitfield," she said, stepping inside, "I understand we have a limited window before tomorrow morning's appointment. I would like to begin immediately." She spent 3 hours with me. It was the most thorough examination of my mind I have ever undergone. She tested my verbal recall, my abstract reasoning, my spatial orientation, my ability to calculate and to sequence. She asked me to remember 3 words at the start of the session and recall them 40 minutes later. She asked me to count backward from 100 by sevens. She asked me to identify objects, to repeat phrases, to follow multi-step instructions without writing anything down. I gave her the full MMSE at the end. 30 questions covering orientation, registration, attention, recall, and language. She sat across the desk from me in my study and tallied the score in silence. Then she looked up. "Mr. Whitfield," she said, "your score on the mini mental state examination is 30 out of 30. A perfect score. Your abstract reasoning is in the 99th percentile for your age group. Your verbal recall is flawless." She paused. "I have been doing this for 22 years. Scores like this are not common in men half your age." She began packing her briefcase. "I will have a 14-page notarized report on Mr. Stanton's desk by 4 o'clock this afternoon. It will state without qualification that you show 0 indicators of cognitive decline and that your mental function is exceptional." She stopped at the door. "I know Neil Ashford's work," she said, and her voice went flat. "If he produces a contrary finding in court, I will be present to see his credentials formally reviewed." She left at 12:10 in the afternoon. Ashford arrived the next morning at 10:15, 15 minutes late. He came in an expensive suit that did not quite fit across the shoulders, with Judith walking half a step behind him like a stage manager positioning an actor before the curtain goes up. He had silver hair and a practiced smile and the firm handshake of a man who has been told it inspires confidence. He sat in the living room armchair, the same armchair, The fireplace camera was running. He opened with soft questions, the kind designed to feel like conversation. How was I sleeping? Did I find myself feeling overwhelmed by day-to-day decisions? Did I sometimes feel that people around me did not understand what I was going through? I told him I felt angry. He wrote something in his notebook. Angry about what, Gerald? About betrayal, I said. About being lied to by people I trusted. He nodded slowly, still writing. And do you feel that your family has been dishonest with you? I know they have been, I said. More writing. He was getting what he had come for. Or so he thought. Then he looked up with a pleasant and entirely false smile. I would like to try a brief exercise if you do not mind. Nothing complicated. I just want you to draw me a simple diagram of your home. Whatever comes to mind. A rough sketch is perfectly fine. He slid a blank sheet of paper and a pen across the coffee table. I looked at the paper. I thought about the garage. I thought about the 1967 Mustang that had been sitting half-finished in there for 3 years before I finally committed to the restoration. I thought about the hydraulic lift I had installed myself, the fuel line routing I had reworked twice to get the pressure balance right, the ventilation system I had spec'd out to keep the fumes from building up near the floor. I picked up the pen. I did not draw a floor plan. I drew the garage. I started with the structural dimensions, working from the foundation up, the way you always start. Width, depth, ceiling height, load-bearing wall positions. I marked the location of the hydraulic lift with its anchor points and the weight rating I had calculated when I installed it. I drew the fuel line routing for the Mustang restoration, the rework I had done on the second attempt when the pressure differential was causing a slight stutter at idle. I added the ventilation system with the intake and exhaust positions and the airflow calculation I had worked out to keep hydrocarbon levels below threshold near the floor. I labeled every component. I noted the torque specs on the lift anchor bolts from memory because I had looked them up so many times during the installation that the numbers were simply part of me now. It took about 12 minutes. I put the pen down and slid the paper back across the coffee table. The room was very quiet. Ashford picked up the drawing and looked at it. He turned it slightly, then turned it back. Judith leaned forward to look at it from her angle. Neither of them said anything for a long moment. He gets stuck on details, Judith said finally, and there was a tightness in her voice that she was working to keep out of it. He has always been this way. It is a pattern. He cannot do a simple task without overcomplicating it. Ashford set the drawing down on the coffee table. Something had shifted in his face. The professional warmth was still there, but it had gone mechanical, like a light that is still on but no longer connected to anything. He folded the drawing carefully and placed it in his jacket pocket. "Thank you for your time, Gerald," he said. "This has been very useful." He was standing before he finished the sentence. He was at the door in under 2 minutes. Judith followed him out, throwing one look back at me from the doorway that contained several things at once, none of them friendly. The door closed. The house went quiet. I walked to my study, opened the monitoring software, and stopped the recording. I watched the file save. Then I uploaded it to the encrypted cloud server and named it Exhibit B. I sat at my desk for a while after that, not thinking about Ashford or Judith or Leonard. I was thinking about Philip's call from the night before, and the thing he had told me was still unresolved. While pulling together the deed and estate documents in preparation for the hearing, Philip had found a reference to a trust filing he had not prepared. He had not been able to get the full details yet. He told me to go look in the back of my study closet behind the old drafting files and see if there was anything there I had missed. I had not gone to look yet. I had been focused on the cameras, on Ashford, on the performance. Now the house was quiet and there was nothing left to prepare for. I got up and went to the closet. It was on the floor, pushed back behind 2 boxes of old project files from the plant years. A plain cardboard banker's box with no label printed on it. Just 3 words written by hand on the side panel in the handwriting I would know anywhere, in any light after 41 years of marriage. Margaret Personal. I had not opened this box since the week after she died. I remembered putting it in this closet and telling myself I would go through it when I was ready. 4 years had gone by and I had never been ready. I carried it to my desk and cut the old tape with a utility knife. The smell that came up was paper and lavender, and for a moment I could not do anything but sit there with my hands on the edges of the box. Inside were things I recognized, letters from when we were young and I was working a job 3 states away, and we wrote to each other twice a week because long-distance calls cost money we did not have. A photograph from our honeymoon in Colorado, a drawing Otto had made for her in 1st grade that she had kept for reasons known only to her. At the bottom, under everything else, was a thick beige envelope with no label, just a small silver key taped to the back with a strip of yellowed tape. The key had a blue plastic tag on the ring. The tag said, Wells Fargo, Clintonville Branch, Box 24-7. I held the key in my palm and looked at it for a long time. I have banked at the same institution for 40 years, and it is not Wells Fargo. Margaret handled the household accounts, and I handled the investments, and we had never, in 41 years, had any account at Wells Fargo. This was not a key I had ever seen. This was not a box I had ever known about. Margaret had a secret. I drove to the Clintonville branch the next morning before the courthouse. The branch manager walked me through the process with patience, which I appreciated. Death certificate, marriage certificate, my identification, etc. documentation from the estate. 40 minutes of careful paperwork, and then they walked me back to the vault. Box 247 slid out with a sound like a quiet door closing. They put it on the table in a small private room and left me alone with it. Inside was one envelope. Cream-colored, heavy stock. My name on the front in her handwriting. I turned it over. The back was sealed. I opened it. The letter was written on her personal stationery, the pale blue paper she used for correspondence she considered important. 4 pages, both sides in her careful and even script. The date in the upper right corner was the week after her oncologist sat us down in his office and told us the pancreatic cancer had spread beyond the point of surgical intervention. He had given her 8 months, she had lived 11. My dear Gerald, the letter began, if you're reading this, I'm gone and you have found the key. I'm so sorry for the secret. I need you to know that keeping it from you was the hardest thing I have ever done, and I did it because I love you more than I have ever been able to say properly. I have been watching Judith for 6 years, she wrote. The way an accountant watches a column of figures that will not balance no matter how many times you run them. I see what she is. I see what Leonard has become under her influence, which is not the worst of it, because Leonard is weak, but he is not cruel by nature. The cruelty is hers. And you, my love, you're the most structurally sound person I have ever known, and the most completely blind when it comes to the people you have decided to love. I knew if I told you what I saw, you would defend him. You would tell me I was wrong about our son. We would have fought, and I did not want to spend the time I had left fighting, so I did something else instead. Over the past 6 months, she wrote, while I have been telling you I'm resting and reorganizing the household files, I have been doing something different. I have been talking to a lawyer. Not Philip. Philip is too close to you and Leonard knows him and would have fought him. I went to a trust specialist in Cincinnati, a woman named Miriam Trent, who was recommended to me by a colleague from my accounting days. I told her everything. I asked her to help me build something that could not be broken. I read the next paragraph twice to make sure I understood it. Then I set the letter down on the metal table and looked at the wall of the vault room for a moment. Over 6 months of chemotherapy, while I had thought Margaret was resting and sorting through paperwork, she had transferred everything. The deed to the house, the brokerage accounts, the retirement funds, every significant asset we had built together over 41 years of marriage. She had moved all of it legally and permanently into a structure called the Whitfield Family Irrevocable Trust. The total value at the time of transfer had been just over $3 million, and she had appointed our daughter Beverly as successor trustee. Beverly, who was 34 years old and working as an oncology nurse in Denver. Beverly, who Leonard had not invited to his own wedding on the grounds that she was, as I had once overheard him tell Judith, just a nurse and would not fit in with the people they were having there. That Beverly, Margaret had handed Beverly the keys to everything. I picked the letter back up and kept reading. She has a good mind and a steady character, and she will not be impressed by Leonard or frightened by Judith, Margaret had written. She is the right person. I chose her because she is the one neither of them would ever think to look at. There was one more paragraph after that. It described a clause that Miriam Trent had drafted into the trust document at Margaret's specific instruction. The clause stated that if any named beneficiary initiated legal proceedings of any kind aimed at seizing control of Gerald Whitfield's finances or person, that beneficiary would be permanently and irrevocably removed from any inheritance. The clause listed Leonard by name. Leonard had filed his conservatorship petition 11 days ago. I sat in that small room in the Wells Fargo vault for a long time. 4 years. For 4 years I had been living in a house that no longer belonged to me in the way I thought it did. For 4 years Margaret had been gone, and the thing she built in the last months of her life had been sitting there quietly, waiting for exactly this moment. She had known, she had seen it coming. She had done something about it while she was the sickest she had ever been in her life without telling me, because she understood that if she told me I would have gotten in the way. I folded the letter carefully and put it in my jacket pocket. I put the trust document in my briefcase. I drove to the courthouse. The courtroom in the Franklin County Courthouse was gray and fluorescent and cold. Leonard sat at the petitioner's table with Carl Dunmore, his attorney. Judith was in the gallery behind them, dressed in the careful way of a woman who wants to look like a worried family member and not like someone who has been planning this for months. Philip and I sat at the respondent's table. I wore the suit I had last worn to Margaret's funeral. It felt like the right choice. Dunmore opened for the petitioner. He was polished and he spoke slowly, giving the judge time to absorb each point. He described a loving family, a brilliant man, a heartbreaking decline. He talked about missed appointments, confused phone calls, the stove incident, the forgotten passwords. He made it sound like a tragedy unfolding in slow motion, and Leonard and Judith like two people sacrificing their own peace of mind to do what was right for a father who could no longer do it for himself. Then he introduced Dr. Neil Ashford. Ashford took the stand and delivered his report in the measured tones of a man who has testified before and knows how to hold a room, early-stage cognitive impairment, classic perseveration on the drawing test, inability to follow a simple two-step instruction, fixation on irrelevant detail, agitation, paranoid ideation. He said that in his professional opinion, I lacked the capacity to manage my own financial affairs and that without immediate intervention, I represented a risk to my own estate. Leonard was watching me from the petitioner's table. He had an expression of practiced sorrow on his face that I had never seen from him before. I wondered how long he had been working on it. Philip stood up. He did not raise his voice. He did not move quickly. He walked to the podium with one slim folder and he looked at Ashford on the stand and he smiled the way I have seen him smile exactly twice in 28 years, which is when he already has everything he needs and the other side does not know it yet. He asked Ashford about his credentials, then about the declaration he had signed before visiting my house. Then he asked whether it was standard practice to form a clinical conclusion about a patient before meeting them. Then he called Dr. Lorraine DuPont. She walked in and the temperature in the room changed. Ashford watched her cross to the witness stand and something went out of his face. He knew who she was. Philip established her credentials in under 3 minutes, which was all the time needed because the credentials established themselves. Head of geriatric psychiatry at Ohio State University Medical Center, 22 years of clinical practice. Formerly on the advisory board of the American Geriatrics Society. She presented the score sheet, 30 out of 30. She said that in her clinical experience, a perfect MMSE score was uncommon in men 20 years younger than me. She described my abstract reasoning results, my recall, my ability to perform multi-sequence calculations without assistance. Then she turned to Ashford's report and went through it point by point. She used the word fabricated. She used it twice. She did not apologize for it either time. Then Philip introduced the video. The monitors in the courtroom showed my living room from the fireplace camera angle. The image was clear and the audio was clean. The courtroom watched Judith sit down in the armchair with her leather folio. They heard her describe a general durable power of attorney as estate organization documents, standard wording, nothing that changes anything about your day-to-day life. They watched her thumb press down across the title of the document. They watched the papers shift and the title appear for one clear second in the center of the frame. They watched me sign a name that was not my real signature while Judith held her thumb over the words on the page. The judge watched the video without any expression at all. When it finished, she looked at Dunmore. Then she looked at Leonard. Then she looked at Judith in the gallery for a long moment before she looked back at the bench. The petition was denied, with prejudice. The judge referred the matter to the Franklin County Prosecutor's Office for review of potential elder financial abuse charges and fraud on the court. She referred Ashford's conduct to the Ohio State Medical Board. She told Dunmore he would be contacted by the Bar Association's disciplinary committee and that he should take that contact seriously. Leonard and Judith were already moving toward the doors. Philip and I followed them into the hallway. It was wide and marble-floored and very quiet in the way that public buildings are quiet after something significant has just happened inside them. And then the elevator at the end of the hall opened. Beverly Whitfield stepped out. My daughter. She was in her nurse's scrubs just off a red-eye flight from Denver, and she had a woman in a gray suit beside her carrying a heavy briefcase. Beverly is 38 years old, and she has her mother's eyes and her mother's way of being calm in rooms where other people are not calm. Leonard stared at his sister. What are you doing here? I'm the successor trustee of the Whitfield Family Irrevocable Trust, Beverly said. She said it the same way she would tell a patient their test results. Clearly, without drama, because the facts were enough. The woman in the gray suit opened her briefcase and took out the trust document. She read the disinheritance clause aloud, all of it, including the section where Leonard was listed by name, and including the language specifying that any legal proceeding aimed at controlling Gerald Whitfield's finances or person would constitute the triggering condition. She read the date the clause was drafted. She read Margaret's signature at the bottom. Judith said something low and sharp to Leonard that I did not catch. Leonard did not respond to her. He looked at me instead, not with anger. He looked at me the way a man looks when he finally understands the full size of something and realizes there is no undoing it. I looked back at him and I did not feel what I expected to feel. I just felt very tired and very clear. The house you were planning to sell, Beverly said to her brother, has not been in Dad's name for 4 years. Mom made sure of it. They filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy 6 weeks later. The Lake Erie deposit was gone. The Dublin house went to the bank. Carl Dunmore was suspended from practice pending a full ethics review. The Ohio Medical Board opened a formal investigation into Ashford's licensing. It has been almost a year since that morning in the hallway. I'm sitting on my front porch right now with a cup of coffee. The Mustang runs. I finished it in February, and the first Saturday I took it out, I drove south for 2 hours with no destination and the windows down even though it was cold because I could. Beverly comes up from Denver once a month. We sit at the kitchen table that was Margaret's table, and we go over the trust statements together. Last visit, she showed me a line item I had not noticed before. 20% of annual trust income directed to pancreatic cancer research at Ohio State University, in Margaret's name. She did not just build a wall to protect me. She built something that would keep producing good after she was gone. I lost a son. I want to say that plainly without softening it because it deserves to be said plainly. The boy I raised is somewhere inside the man Leonard became, but the man made his choices and they were not small ones, and there is no road back from them. That is a weight I will carry for the rest of my life, and I'm not going to pretend otherwise, but I found out who my wife really was. What she did alone in the month she was sickest, while I thought she was resting. The planning, the trust document, the key she hid, and the letter she sealed, and the daughter she trusted, and the clause she wrote with his name in it. She saw what I could not see, and she acted when I would not have acted. And she did all of it without telling me because she knew me well enough to know I would have gotten in the way. She protected me from the one threat I refused to acknowledge. That was the last thing she did before she died. If you are a man of a certain age sitting somewhere right now with people in your life you have decided to trust without looking too closely, I want you to hear this. The people who love you most are not always the loudest ones in the room. Sometimes they are the quiet ones sitting across the table doing arithmetic you cannot see. Pay attention to that, and if something does not add up, do not look away from it just because looking would be uncomfortable. I looked away for too long. Margaret made sure it did not cost me everything. If this story means something to you, leave a comment and tell me where you're watching from. And if you have ever had to draw a hard line with someone you loved, hit like and subscribe. You're not alone in it.